Lena Moore's hand shook as she typed the breakup text, tears blurring her vision. 7 years together, and she'd found him in their bed with her best friend. She hit send with trembling fingers, only to see a number she didn't recognize staring back at her. Wrong contact, wrong person. The humiliation crashed over her like a wave until 3 dots appeared on her screen. A stranger was typing, and somehow that stranger would change everything. If you want to see how one mistake can rewrite an entire life, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels across the world. The apartment felt smaller than it had that morning. Funny how betrayal could shrink a space, compress walls until they pressed against your ribs, and made breathing feel like a luxury you hadn't earned. Lena Moore sat on the bathroom floor, her back against the cold porcelain tub, phone clutched in both hands like it might somehow anchor her to reality. The image was burned into her retinas. Walking into her own bedroom after a long shift at the hospital, exhausted and looking forward to falling into bed beside Tyler, only to find him tangled in sheets with Jessica. Her Jessica. The woman who'd been her roommate in college, her maid of honor at the wedding that never happened, her self-proclaimed soulmate who knew every secret Lena had ever whispered into the dark, the sounds they'd made, the way neither of them had noticed her standing in the doorway for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. The way Tyler had looked at her, not guilty, not apologetic, but annoyed at the interruption. Lena, just let me explain. She'd run. Grabbed her purse, her phone, her keys, and run like the apartment was on fire. Maybe it was. Maybe everything she'd built over 7 years had been nothing but kindling, waiting for a match. Now she sat in her car in a grocery store parking lot at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, makeup streaking her face, chest heaving with sobs that felt like they might crack her sternum. The phone glowed in the darkness, her thumbs moving across the screen with mechanical precision. It's over. I saw you. I saw everything. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't try to explain. We're done. 7 years and you threw it away for 15 minutes with someone who was supposed to be my friend. I hope it was worth it. She pressed send before she could second-guess the words, before the practical part of her brain could interfere with the raw, bleeding part that needed him to know exactly how destroyed she felt. The message showed as delivered, then read. Lena waited for the explosion, for the desperate calls, the manipulative texts, the gaslighting that would try to convince her she'd misunderstood what her own eyes had witnessed. Tyler was good at that, rewriting history until she questioned her own memory. Instead, 3 dots appeared. Someone was typing. The response came through and Lena's blood turned to ice water. I think you have the wrong number, but for what it's worth, anyone who cheats on someone clearly not worth your tears. And your friend? She was never really your friend. Lena stared at the screen. Wrong number. She'd sent the most devastating message of her life to a complete stranger. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. I meant to text the person I'm sorry. The 3 dots appeared again almost immediately. Don't apologize. You're clearly going through hell. Are you somewhere safe? The question was so unexpected, so genuinely concerned, that Lena felt fresh tears spill down her cheeks. A stranger cared more about her safety in this moment than the man she'd spent 7 years loving. I'm in my car, parking lot. I couldn't stay in the apartment. With him? With both of them. Jesus. That's cold. Lena let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. You have no idea. I might have some idea. I've seen my share of betrayal. Different circumstances, but the knife still cuts. There was something in those words, a weight that suggested this stranger understood pain on a level most people didn't. Lena found herself typing before she could stop herself. How did you survive it? The response took longer this time. She watched the dots appear and disappear 3 times before the message finally came through. Badly at first. Made some choices I'm not proud of. But eventually I realized that people who betray you are showing you who they really are. And more importantly, who they're not. They're not worth rebuilding yourself around. I don't know how to rebuild. I don't even know who I am without him. Then maybe that's the gift in all this pain. Chance to figure out who you are without someone else defining it. Lena leaned her head back against the headrest, phone resting on her chest. The parking lot was nearly empty now, just a few scattered cars under the fluorescent lights. She should probably go somewhere. A hotel, maybe. Her parents' house was 2 hours away, and she couldn't face that drive right now. Couldn't face her mother's "I told you so" expression. I should let you go. I'm sure you weren't expecting to play therapist to a stranger tonight. I've got nowhere to be. And honestly, sometimes strangers are easier to talk to than people who know all your history. Why is that? No expectations, no judgment, no pre-existing narrative about who you're supposed to be. Lena found herself smiling despite everything. You're very wise for a wrong number. I've had a lot of practice being wrong about things. You learn wisdom or you don't survive. What's your name? If I'm going to have a breakdown in your text messages, I should at least know who's witnessing it. Another pause. Longer this time. Marco. And you? Lena. Well, Lena, first thing you need to do is get out of that parking lot. Go somewhere with people. A diner, a coffee shop, somewhere you're not alone in the dark. I look like hell. I can't go anywhere public like this. You look like someone who just had her heart ripped out. No shame in that. But sitting alone in a dark parking lot while you're this upset isn't safe. Trust me on this. There was something in his tone, even through text, that made Lena listen. An authority that suggested Marco knew what he was talking about when it came to safety and danger. Okay, there's a 24-hour diner about 2 miles from here. Good. Drive there. Text me when you arrive so I know you made it. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. Go. Lena started her car, her hands steadier than they'd been in hours. Something about Marco's certainty gave her a framework to operate within. Drive to the diner. Get somewhere safe. One step at a time. The diner was exactly the kind of place that had survived decades without changing. Vinyl booths, checkerboard floors, a jukebox in the corner that probably still worked. Lena slid into a corner booth, ordered coffee she didn't want from a waitress who'd clearly seen worse breakdowns than hers, and pulled out her phone. I'm here, safe and caffeinated. Good. How are you feeling? Like my entire life was a lie. Like I wasted 7 years on someone who didn't deserve 7 minutes. Not wasted. You learned who not to be with. That's valuable information. Expensive lesson. The expensive ones are usually the ones that stick. Lena wrapped her hands around the coffee mug, letting the heat seep into her palms. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why are you being so kind to a stranger? The response came quickly this time. Because someone was kind to me once when I needed it. Paying it forward. Tell me about it? I could use the distraction. Not much to tell. I made some bad choices young. Got involved with the wrong people, wrong situations. Someone pulled me out before I drowned completely. Gave me a chance I didn't deserve. What kind of bad choices? The kind that change you. The kind you spend years trying to make up for. Lena sensed a door closing, a boundary being drawn. She respected it. Fair enough. We all have things we'd rather not talk about. What did you do? Before tonight upended everything? I'm a nurse, pediatric ICU. That's heavy work. It is, but it matters. Helping families through the worst moments of their lives, giving kids a fighting chance, it's worth the wait. Sounds like you're good at taking care of everyone except yourself. Lena blinked at the screen. Excuse me? No offense meant, but you're a caretaker professionally. You spent 7 years with someone who clearly didn't appreciate you, and here you are apologizing to me for texting the wrong number when you're the one who got betrayed. Pattern recognition. Are you psychoanalyzing me, Marco? Just observing. You can tell me to stop. No, you're right. I do that. Put everyone else first. Might be time to change that pattern. The waitress refilled Lena's coffee without asking. Outside the diner windows, the city moved through its late-night rhythms, taxis, delivery trucks, people heading home from third shift or heading out for first. Life continuing despite personal apocalypses. I don't even know where to start. Start with tonight. Where are you going to sleep? I don't know. Hotel, I guess. I can't go back to the apartment? Good. Don't. Let him sit in what he did. You focus on yourself. All my stuff is there. My clothes, my books, everything. Stuff can be replaced. Your peace of mind can't. Get a hotel room, get some sleep, deal with logistics tomorrow when you're thinking clearly. When did you get so wise about breakups? Trial and error. Mostly error. Lena felt herself smiling again. This stranger had done more to stabilize her in an hour than Tyler had in months. Maybe years. Can I keep texting you? I know that's weird, but I don't want to be alone with my thoughts right now. Text me as much as you want. I'm a night owl anyway. They talked for hours. Lena learned that Marco was originally from New York, but had moved around a lot for work, that he preferred whiskey to wine, old movies to new ones, and had a dog named Dante who was currently snoring at his feet. He asked about her work, her family, her dreams before Tyler had made himself the center of her universe. I wanted to work with Doctors Without Borders, Lena typed, surprised she was admitting this to a stranger. Travel, help people in places where medical care is scarce. Tyler thought it was impractical. Tyler sounds like he had small dreams. He wanted stability. A house in the suburbs, 2.5 kids, white picket fence. And you? I wanted adventure, purpose, something bigger than myself. So why did you stay? Lena stared at the question for a long time. Because I thought love meant compromise. Turns out, I was the only one compromising. That's not love, that's surrender. The words hit her like a physical blow. 7 years of surrender disguised as commitment. 7 years of making herself smaller so Tyler could feel bigger. How do I make sure I don't do that again? Know your worth. Set boundaries. Walk away the first time someone shows you they don't respect those boundaries. Don't wait for the 7th year and the best friend in your bed. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's hard as hell. But it's necessary. Around 3 a.m., Lena finally checked into a hotel. Nothing fancy, just a clean room with a bed that didn't smell like betrayal. She texted Marco the address without thinking about how that might seem too trusting. Safe and sound. Thank you for tonight. You probably saved me from doing something stupid. Like what? Like going back and trying to fix it. Like accepting whatever excuse he came up with. You're stronger than that. How do you know? You don't even know me. I know you had the strength to leave. That's harder than staying. Lena lay on the hotel bed, still fully dressed, phone glowing in the darkness. Can I ask you something personal? You can ask. I might not answer. Have you ever been in love? The response took several minutes. Yes. What happened? She died. Lena's breath caught. Marco, I'm so sorry. It was a long time ago. Different life. Does it still hurt? Every day. But differently now. Less sharp, more hollow. I can't imagine. I hope you never have to. Heartbreak from betrayal heals. Death doesn't give you that option. They talked until Dawn started painting the hotel room windows pink and gold. Talked about loss and survival. About the difference between being alone and being lonely. About the courage it takes to start over when everything familiar has been stripped away. I should let you sleep, Marco finally typed as sunlight streamed through the curtains. You've had the worst night. You need rest. I don't want to stop talking to you. I'm not going anywhere. Sleep. We can talk later. Promise? Promise. Lena finally closed her eyes around 6 a.m., phone still clutched in her hand, Marco's last message glowing on the screen. For the first time in 12 hours, she felt something other than devastation. She felt possibility. When she woke up 6 hours later, there were 17 missed calls from Tyler and 32 texts ranging from apologetic to angry to desperate. She deleted them all without reading past the first few words. There was one text from Marco. How did you sleep? Lena smiled at her phone. Better than expected. How's Dante? Demanding breakfast and wondering why I'm texting instead of taking him for his walk. Don't let me keep you from your responsibilities. You're not keeping me from anything. Dante can wait 10 minutes. They fell into a rhythm over the next few days. Lena took emergency leave from work, found a lawyer, started the process of disentangling 7 years of shared life. Marco was there through all of it, a constant presence in her phone, offering advice, asking questions that made her think, providing distraction when she needed it. He had a way of reading her moods even through text, knew when she needed tough love and when she needed gentleness, pushed her to advocate for herself with the lawyer, to demand her fair share of their assets, to stop making things easy for Tyler just because confrontation felt uncomfortable. You're entitled to half of everything you built together. Don't let him convince you otherwise. He's saying I'm being greedy. He's saying you're disrupting his narrative. Stand your ground. I hate conflict. I know. But being uncomfortable for a few weeks is better than being broke and resentful for years. Lena found herself trusting Marco's judgment more than people she'd known for decades. There was something about his certainty, his clear-eyed view of situations, that made her feel protected, even from a distance. "Can I ask what you do for work?" she texted one afternoon while waiting in her lawyer's office. "I solve problems. That's vague. It's accurate. Legal problems? Among other things. Are you being mysterious on purpose?" "Maybe a little. Does it bother you?" Lena thought about it. "No. Actually, I kind of like it. Nice to have something in my life that isn't completely mapped out and predictable." "Your ex made things predictable?" "Suffocatingly so. I knew exactly how every conversation would go, every argument, every Sunday morning. 7 years of the same patterns over and over. Sounds like prison." It was. I just didn't realize it until someone opened the cell door. 2 weeks after the wrong text that changed everything, Marco sent her a message that made her heart skip. "How would you feel about meeting in person?" Lena stared at the screen, her stomach doing complicated gymnastics. Like meeting for coffee? Like meeting for dinner? Somewhere nice. My treat. That feels like a date. Would that be terrible? Lena's fingers hovered over the keyboard. This stranger had become her lifeline, her confidant, the person who knew more about her current emotional state than anyone else in her life. But meeting him meant making it real, meant stepping from the safety of text messages into actual physical space. "I look like hell. I've been crying for 2 weeks. "I doubt that. But even if true, I'm not interested in how you look. I'm interested in who you are. You don't even know me. I know you're strong enough to walk away from someone who hurt you. I know you put everyone else first and yourself last. I know you dream about making a real difference in the world. I know you're funny and smart and braver than you think you are. That's enough to want to buy you dinner. What if we have nothing to talk about in person? Then we'll have a quiet meal and never speak again. But I don't think that's going to happen." "Why not?" "Because we've talked every day for 2 weeks and haven't run out of things to say yet." Lena took a deep breath. Okay. Dinner, but somewhere public. Of course somewhere public. I'm not a psychopath. Saturday at 8? There's a restaurant downtown, Il Momento. I'll make a reservation. That place is expensive. I said my treat. Don't worry about the cost. Saturday felt both impossibly far away and terrifyingly close. Lena spent the intervening days in a state of anxious anticipation, changing her mind about the date 17 times. She told herself it wasn't really a date, just dinner with someone who'd been kind to her. Then Marco would text something thoughtful or funny or unexpectedly deep, and her heart would do that skip thing again. "What should I wear?" she asked Friday night, already regretting the question. Too eager, too presumptuous. "Whatever makes you feel confident. I haven't felt confident in years." Then wear something that makes you feel like the person you want to become. Saturday morning, Lena stood in front of her hotel closet. She'd eventually retrieved her clothes from the apartment while Tyler was at work, couldn't face seeing him yet, and pulled out a dress she'd bought 2 years ago and never worn. Tyler had said it was too revealing, too attention-seeking. It was perfect. She arrived at Il Momento 15 minutes early, too nervous to be late. The restaurant was elegant without being pretentious, soft lighting, white tablecloths, the kind of place where people celebrated anniversaries and closed business deals. The hostess smiled professionally. "Reservation for Valenti," Lena said, Marco's last name feeling strange on her tongue. "Right this way. Mr. Valenti is already here." Her heart hammered as she followed the hostess through the restaurant, and then she saw him. Marco Valenti stood when she approached, and Lena's breath caught. He was tall, easily 6'2", with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged in old Italian films. Strong jaw, dark eyes that tracked her movement with an intensity that should have been unsettling, but instead felt like being seen for the first time in years. He wore a suit that had definitely been tailored specifically for him, charcoal gray that highlighted broad shoulders. But it was his smile that undid her. Warm and genuine and slightly uncertain, like he was as nervous about this as she was. "Lena," Marco. He moved around the table, pulled out her chair with old-fashioned courtesy that Tyler would have mocked as performative. You look beautiful. You're not supposed to comment on how women look anymore. I'm commenting on the fact that you're glowing. There's a difference. Lena sat, trying to calm her racing pulse. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know, someone less what? Less everything. She gestured vaguely at him. You're very tall? Intimidating. Marco's expression shifted, something shadowing those dark eyes. I don't want to intimidate you. It's not a bad thing. Just different from your text personality. My text personality? Gentle, funny, safe. And I don't seem safe in person? Lena studied him. The expensive suit, the confidence in how he held himself, the way other diners kept glancing at their table with a mixture of curiosity and deference. You seem like someone important, someone powerful. I'm just a man having dinner with a woman he's been talking to for 2 weeks. Are you, though? Just a man? Marco leaned back in his chair, something calculating entering his expression. What are you asking, Lena? I'm asking if there's a reason you've been vague about what you do for a living. If there's a reason you know so much about handling difficult situations and protecting yourself. If there's a reason everyone in this restaurant seems to know who you are. The waiter appeared with wine Marco must have ordered before she arrived. He waited until they were alone again before answering. I told you I solve problems. What kind of problems require this much? She gestured at the restaurant, at him, at the obvious deference. Respect? The kind most people can't handle themselves. That's not an answer. It's the answer you're getting tonight. His voice was gentle but firm. We can talk about my work eventually, but tonight, I'd rather talk about you. Lena should have pushed, should have demanded clarity, but there was something in his eyes, a plea for normalcy, for one evening where he could just be Marco instead of whatever Marco Valenti really was in his professional life. Okay, she said softly, but eventually means you're planning on there being more dinners. His smile returned, transforming his entire face. I'm planning on there being as many dinners as you'll agree to. They talked for 3 hours. Marco asked about her work, really asked. Wanted to know about specific cases, how she handled the emotional weight of losing young patients, what made her choose pediatric care over adult medicine. He remembered details from their text conversations, built on them, pushed her to articulate dreams she'd buried under Tyler's practical objections. Doctors Without Borders, he said over dessert. Is that still something you want? I don't know anymore. It feels like someone else's dream, or it feels like your dream that got deferred. I'm 32. If I was going to do it, I should have done it years ago. Says who? Who made that rule? Society, common sense. My mother. Marco laughed. Society and common sense are wrong about most things, and mothers mean well, but they're usually protecting their own fears, not your potential. You sound like you have experience with that. My mother wanted me to be a lawyer, corporate, safe, respectable, and instead, I solve problems. That slight smile again, the one that suggested layers she hadn't begun to uncover. When Marco walked her to her car, she'd driven separately, still cautious despite everything, Lena felt the evening ending too soon. She'd laughed more in 3 hours than she had in 3 months, felt more alive, more seen, more herself than she could remember feeling with Tyler. Thank you for dinner, she said, fishing for her keys. Thank you for taking a chance on a wrong number. Best mistake I ever made. Marco reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear with a gentleness that contradicted his intimidating presence. Can I see you again? Yes? Tomorrow? Lena laughed. Eager? I've been talking to you every day for 2 weeks. One dinner isn't nearly enough. Tomorrow then, but somewhere less fancy. I want to see you somewhere normal. Define normal. Coffee shop, park, somewhere you can't hide behind expensive wine and perfect ambiance. Marco's eyes gleamed. You think I'm hiding? I think you're very good at controlling environments. I want to see you somewhere you can't control everything. Fair enough. Millennium Park, tomorrow at 2. It's a date. The word hung between them, acknowledged this time. Not dinner with a friend. A date. Marco smiled, slow and dangerous and completely disarming. Yes, he said. It is. He waited until she was in her car, doors locked, engine started, before walking back toward his own vehicle, a black sedan that probably cost more than Lena made in a year. She watched him in her rearview mirror, this man who'd appeared in her life at exactly the moment she needed someone to remind her of her own worth. Her phone buzzed before she'd pulled out of the parking lot. I had an incredible evening. Can't wait for tomorrow. Lena smiled at the screen, that familiar warmth spreading through her chest. Me too. Thank you for being exactly who I needed, exactly when I needed it. Maybe the universe knew what it was doing with that wrong number. Maybe it did. She drove back to her hotel, still couldn't face finding an apartment, making decisions about permanent housing, and fell asleep with her phone on the pillow beside her, Marco's last text glowing in the darkness. For the first time since finding Tyler in bed with Jessica, Lena Moore felt something other than grief. She felt anticipation, hope, the terrifying, exhilarating sense that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't predict or control. And for once, that didn't scare her. It thrilled her. Sunday afternoon sunlight filtered through Chicago's skyline, casting long shadows across Millennium Park. Lena arrived 10 minutes early again, unable to shake the nervous energy that had kept her up most of the night. She'd changed outfits 4 times before settling on jeans and a sweater, casual, approachable, nothing like the dress from last night that had made her feel like someone braver than she actually was. Marco was already there, leaning against the bean sculpture with his hands in his pockets, looking somehow more dangerous in casual clothes than he had in that perfectly tailored suit. Dark jeans, leather jacket, white t-shirt that probably cost more than it had any right to. He saw her approaching, and his entire face transformed with that smile that made her stomach flip. "You're early," he said. "So are you." "I've been here since 1:30, Lena laughed. "That's not early. That's excessive." "I was nervous." He said it simply, without embarrassment, and somehow that admission made him more real than all their late-night conversations combined. They walked through the park, weaving between tourists taking photos and families enjoying the unseasonably warm November afternoon. Marco bought them coffee from a street vendor, remembered that she took hers with cream and no sugar, handed her the cup like it was something precious. "Tell me about your family," Lena said, settling onto a bench overlooking the lake. "You know everything about mine." "Fair's fair." Marco's expression shuddered slightly. "Not much to tell. My father died when I was 17. My mother remarried, moved to Florida. We talk occasionally." "That's very surface level. I'm a private person. You've heard me sob about my ex-boyfriend cheating on me with my best friend. I think we're past surface level." He smiled at that, but there was something sad in it. "My father was complicated. He had expectations, traditional ideas about what his son should become. The corporate lawyer thing. Among other things, he wanted me respectable, clean. He thought I was too much like him when he was young, too willing to take risks, too comfortable with conflict." "Was he right?" Marco looked out at the water, jaw tight. "Yes. Turns out I'm exactly like him. Just found different ways to channel it. The problem-solving business." "The problem-solving business," he agreed, not looking at her. Lena studied his profile. Strong nose, sharp cheekbones, the kind of face that artists would want to sketch. But it was the tension in his shoulders that caught her attention, the way he held himself like he was braced for attack even in a peaceful park on a Sunday afternoon. "Marco, what kind of problems do you solve?" He turned to face her then, those dark eyes searching hers. "Are you sure you want to know?" "Would I have asked if I wasn't? Sometimes people ask questions they don't really want answered. They just want to feel like they've done their due diligence. I'm not people. I'm me. And I want to know who you are." He was quiet for a long moment, wrestling with something internal. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful. "I work in dispute resolution. When traditional channels fail, legal, corporate, personal, people come to me to find solutions that work outside conventional boundaries." "That's still vague." "It's intentionally vague." "Why?" "Because some things are better discovered gradually than dumped all at once." Lena set her coffee down on the bench between them. I need you to be straight with me about something. Okay. Are you dangerous? Marco didn't flinch from the question. Define dangerous. Are you going to hurt me? Never. The word was instant, absolute, no hesitation. Are you involved in anything illegal? His pause was answer enough. Lena felt her stomach drop. I operate in gray areas, he said finally. I help people who can't help themselves through legitimate channels. Sometimes that means bending rules. Sometimes it means breaking them. Like what? Like nothing that would ever touch you. Nothing that would ever put you at risk. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you right now. He reached for her hand and Lena let him take it, let him thread their fingers together. I know that's not fair. I know you deserve full transparency, but there are things about my life that I can't explain without what? Without scaring you away. And I'm not ready to lose you yet. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. You can't lose something you don't have. Can't I? His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. I've talked to you every day for 2 weeks. I know how you take your coffee, what time you go to bed, which patients haunt you when you can't sleep. I know you bite your bottom lip when you're thinking hard about something, and you laugh like you're surprised by your own joy. I know you, Lena, and I don't want to stop knowing you. Even though I'm a mess? Even though I'm barely 2 weeks out of a 7-year relationship? You're not a mess. You're healing. There's a difference. Most men would run from that much emotional baggage. Marco smiled, dark and a little dangerous. I'm not most men. No, Lena agreed, squeezing his hand. You're really not. They walked for another hour, the conversation shifting to safer topics. Favorite books, worst movies, the strange comfort of all-night diners. Marco told her about Dante, his 3-year-old German shepherd, who thought he was a lapdog despite weighing 90 pounds. Lena told him about her sister's upcoming wedding, how she'd been dreading being a bridesmaid while Tyler was supposed to be her date. Bring me instead, Marco said. You want to be my date to my sister's wedding? Why not? Because we've known each other for 2 weeks. Because my entire family will assume we're serious. Because my mother will start planning our wedding before the reception ends. And those are problems because Lena stopped walking, turned to face him. Because I don't know what this is. I don't know what we're doing. We're getting to know each other. By going to family weddings together? By spending time together wherever that time happens to be. If your sister's wedding is in 6 months, we'll figure out then if it makes sense for me to go. If it's next weekend, I'll go if you want me there. It's next weekend. Marco laughed, surprised. Okay then, I'll get a suit. You own like 17 suits. I'll get a new one anyway. Make a good impression on your family. They're going to interrogate you. Good. I'll interrogate them right back. Fair trade. Lena found herself smiling despite her anxiety. You're insane. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just sure about what I want. And what do you want? He stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. You. Getting to know you. Seeing where this goes without overthinking every step. I'm an overthinker. It's my default setting. Then I'll just have to distract you from overthinking. He kissed her then, right there in Millennium Park with tourists streaming past and the city humming around them. Kissed her like she was something rare and breakable and worth every risk. Lena melted into it, her hands fisting in his jacket, every rational thought dissolving under the heat of his mouth. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marco rested his forehead against hers. Too fast? He asked. Probably. Want me to stop? Absolutely not. He smiled against her lips. Good, because I've been wanting to do that since you walked into the restaurant last night. You hide it well. I'm good at hiding things. Occupational hazard. They spent the rest of the afternoon together, grabbing dinner at a hole-in-the-wall Thai place Marco knew, walking through neighborhoods Lena had lived near for years but never really explored. Marco knew the city in a way that suggested deep roots, pointed out landmarks and shortcuts and places that had been something else before gentrification changed the landscape. You've lived here a long time, Lena observed, most of my adult life. New York didn't suit me after my father died. Too many memories, too many expectations. Chicago let me be someone new. Did it work? Being someone new? For a while. Then I realized you can't outrun yourself. You just become yourself in different locations. It was nearly midnight when Marco walked her back to her hotel. They stood in the parking lot, neither quite ready to say goodbye, the evening stretching between them like something tangible. "Can I see you tomorrow?" Marco asked. "Don't you have work?" "I make my own schedule. One of the few perks of what I do." "Okay, but I need to look for apartments. I can't live in a hotel forever." "I'll help you." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to. Let me help you, Lena." There was something in his voice, almost pleading, like helping her was something he needed rather than something she'd asked for. Lena found herself nodding. "Okay, but nothing too expensive. Nursing doesn't pay what people think it does." Marco's smile was knowing. "We'll find something perfect. Pick you up at 10? It's a date." That word again, date. Acknowledging what this was becoming, even if neither of them could quite define it yet. Lena's phone buzzed as she got ready for bed. Marco. Already missing her, apparently. "Thank you for today, for trusting me enough to keep showing up. Thank you for giving me reasons to show up. Sleep well. Dream about apartment hunting and boring domestic activities. I'll dream about that kiss instead." There was a pause before his response. "Which kiss? The one in the park or the one against your car door?" Lena laughed. She'd almost forgotten about that second kiss. The one where Marco had pressed her against her car and kissed her until her knees went weak. Both. Definitely both. Good. I'll aim to give you more material for future dreams. Confident, hopeful. There's a difference. Over the next week, Marco became woven into the fabric of Lena's daily life in ways that should have felt intrusive but instead felt natural. He showed up at her hotel with coffee every morning, helped her tour apartments in neighborhoods that balanced safety with affordability, made her laugh when rental applications felt overwhelming. He had opinions, strong ones, about security features and building maintenance and lease terms. Knew things about tenant rights that suggested either extensive research or personal experience as a landlord. Vetoed 3 apartments Lena loved because of inadequate locks or sketchy building management or something about the neighborhood that made his jaw tight. "You're very particular about safety," Lena observed after he'd dismissed another place she'd been excited about. "I'm particular about your safety. There's a difference." "Marco, I've lived in Chicago for 8 years. I can assess neighborhood safety." "Humor me, please." There was something underneath the request, some deep-seated need to protect her that went beyond normal concern. Lena found herself agreeing, trusting his instincts even when they contradicted her own preferences. They finally found a place in Lincoln Park. 1 bedroom, updated kitchen, building with secure entry, and a doorman who Marco chatted with in Italian for 5 minutes before declaring acceptable. The rent was slightly above Lena's budget, but the landlord agreed to cover utilities, and Marco promised to help with furniture. "You don't have to do that," Lena protested. "I want to. Let me do this for you." "Why? We've known each other for 3 weeks. Marco set down the lease paperwork, gave her his full attention. "Because you're important to me. Because I want to see you settled and safe and starting this new chapter properly. Because helping you helps me feel less useless in my own life." "You're not useless." "I'm a lot of things, Lena, not all of them good. Let me be useful in ways that matter." She signed the lease with Marco standing behind her, his hand warm on her shoulder. The apartment was hers starting December 1st, 2 weeks away. 2 weeks to completely rebuild a life that Tyler had occupied for 7 years. "Overwhelmed?" Marco asked as they left the rental office. "Terrified," Lena admitted. "What if I can't do this? What if I'm not ready to live alone?" "You won't be alone. You'll have neighbors, coworkers, friends, and you'll have me if you want me." "I want you." She said it without thinking, then felt her face heat. "I mean, I know what you mean." He pulled her close, right there on the sidewalk. "I want you too, in whatever capacity you'll let me be part of your life." Lena's phone had been blowing up all week with messages from Tyler that she'd mostly ignored. Apologies, accusations, desperate pleas for her to just talk to him. Just let him explain. Jessica had tried too, long rambling texts about mistakes and alcohol and how it didn't mean anything. Marco noticed her deleting another message without reading it Tuesday evening over dinner. Still harassing you? Tyler doesn't know how to let go. Probably because I always came back before. Before? Lena winced. She hadn't meant to admit that. This wasn't the first time he cheated, just the first time I actually left. Marco's expression went very still. How many times? That I know about? 3? That actually happened? Probably more. And you stayed. I thought I could fix it. Thought if I was better, prettier, more interesting, more compliant. Stop. Marco's voice was sharp enough to cut. None of that was your fault. None of it. I know that intellectually, but knowing something and feeling it are different. He made you believe you weren't enough. That's abuse, Lena. Maybe not physical, but it's still abuse. That's a strong word. It's the accurate word. Making someone question their worth, their reality, their right to be upset about betrayal, that's textbook emotional manipulation. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. You're right. I know you're right. It's just hard to accept that I let it happen for so long. Marco reached across the table, took both her hands. You're out now. That's what matters. And he's never touching you again. There was something in his tone that made Lena's pulse skip. Marco, I mean emotionally. He's never manipulating you again. I'll make sure of it. How exactly will you make sure of it? His smile was dangerous. By reminding you every day that you're worth more than he ever deserved. By showing you what respect actually looks like. By being the man he should have been but was too stupid to become. Friday night, Lena's sister Melissa called in a panic about seating charts and last-minute cancellations. Lena listened patiently, made soothing noises, and carefully worked her way toward the question she'd been dreading. So, about my +1, Mom told me about Tyler. I'm so sorry, Lena. What an absolute piece of garbage. Thanks. But actually, I'm bringing someone else. Melissa's squeal nearly deafened her. Who? How? It's been like 3 weeks. His name is Marco. We met recently. It's new, but it's good. How new are we talking? New enough that I'm terrified to bring him to a family wedding, but he insisted. He insisted? Lena, who is this guy? Someone kind. Someone who makes me feel seen. Someone completely different from Tyler. Is he hot? Lena laughed. Extremely. Then bring him. Mom will have a field day, but who cares? You deserve someone who treats you right. Saturday morning, Marco picked Lena up for wedding preparation. Melissa had requested all bridesmaids show up early for hair and makeup. He was wearing another impeccable suit, this one navy blue that made his eyes look almost black. You clean up nice, Lena said, sliding into his car. So do you, though I prefer you in jeans and no makeup. Liar. Truth. You're beautiful either way, but you smile more when you're comfortable. The wedding was beautiful. Winter ceremony in a historic mansion, Melissa glowing in white lace, the groom looking appropriately terrified and overjoyed. Lena stood at the altar as a bridesmaid, trying not to think about how this should have been her and Tyler next year, how she'd dodged a bullet disguised as a relationship. Marco sat in the third row, and every time Lena's eyes drifted to him, he was already watching her. Not the bride, not the ceremony, just her. It should have been unnerving. Instead, it felt grounding, like having an anchor in a sea of relatives asking invasive questions about her breakup. At the reception, her mother descended within minutes. Lena, darling, who is that gorgeous man you brought? Mom, this is Marco Valenti. Marco, my mother, Patricia Moore. Marco stood, shook her hand with perfect courtesy. Mrs. Moore, pleasure to meet you. Your daughter speaks highly of you. Does she? Patricia's eyes gleamed with maternal calculation. And how did you two meet? Wrong number, Marco said smoothly. Lena accidentally texted me during a difficult moment. I answered. Turns out it was the wrong number. Patricia looked between them, clearly trying to assess how serious this was. And what do you do, Marco? I'm in consulting, dispute resolution, corporate mediation, that sort of thing. It was technically true, Lena supposed, just missing about 90% of the context. Her mother grilled him for another 10 minutes before Lena's aunt created a distraction. Marco handled it all with grace that suggested extensive practice dealing with difficult personalities. "Sorry about that," Lena said when they finally escaped to the dance floor. "My mother is protective. I respect that." Marco pulled her close, one hand at her waist, the other cradling her hand against his chest. "She wants to make sure you're not making another mistake." "Are you? A mistake?" "I don't know yet, but I promise I'm trying not to be." They swayed together, the band playing something slow and romantic. Lena rested her head against Marco's shoulder, breathing in his cologne, something expensive and subtly masculine. "Thank you for coming today," she said. "I know family weddings with strangers is nobody's idea of fun." "I'm not here for the wedding. I'm here for you." "Still, this is above and beyond. Get used to it. I don't do anything halfway." Around 11, after cake and toasts and her uncle's embarrassing attempt at the electric slide, Lena's phone buzzed. Tyler, again. "I see you moved on fast." "Guess I didn't mean that much after all." Lena stared at the message, anger bubbling up. How dare he? How dare he make her feel guilty for finding something good after he'd destroyed everything? Marco noticed her expression change. "What's wrong?" "Tyler. Being Tyler." "Let me see." She handed him the phone, watched his jaw tighten as he read the message. "Do you want me to handle this?" "Handle it how?" "Make sure he stops contacting you." "Marco, what does that mean?" He looked at her, and for the first time Lena saw something genuinely dangerous in his eyes. "It means I can have a conversation with him. Make him understand that continuing to harass you is a very bad idea. You can't threaten him." "I wouldn't threaten. I'd promise." "Marco, he's not allowed to make you feel like this. Not after what he did. Not ever again." Marco handed back her phone. "But it's your choice. I won't interfere unless you want me to." Lena thought about Tyler's smug face, the way he'd looked at her that night. Annoyed, not guilty. The months of gaslighting, the years of making her feel small, the texts trying to shame her for moving forward while he'd been the one who destroyed everything. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Handle it." Marco's smile was sharp, was with pleasure. They left the reception around midnight, Marco's hand steady at the small of her back as he guided her to his car. Instead of driving toward her hotel, he headed toward the opposite end of the city. "Where are we going?" "Your ex-boyfriend's apartment. You still have that key?" Lena's heart hammered. "Marco, what are you planning?" "Nothing violent, I promise. But he needs to understand some things, and I'm very good at making people understand things." They pulled up outside the building Lena had called home for 4 years. Tyler's car was in his assigned spot, lights on in the third-floor window. Marco turned to face her. "Last chance to change your mind." "What are you going to do?" "Have a conversation. Very civil, very clear. Make sure he knows that you're done, that his harassment stops tonight, and that continuing to contact you would be very unwise." "You're going to scare him." "Yes. That's exactly what he needs. Men like him only understand power. So I'm going to show him power, and then I'm going to show him what happens to men who hurt women I care about." Lena should have been horrified, should have told Marco to take her back to the hotel, that this was insane, that confronting Tyler would only make things worse. Instead, she handed Marco her key. "Third floor, apartment 3C. Jessica probably won't be there. She usually goes to her mother's on weekends." Marco leaned across the console, kissed her hard and possessive. "Stay in the car, lock the doors. I'll be back in 15 minutes. "What if he calls the police?" "He won't. Trust me." She watched Marco walk into the building, confident and dangerous, every inch the man who solved problems in ways that existed outside conventional boundaries. Her phone was still in her hand, Tyler's last message glowing on the screen. Lena deleted it, then deleted his contact, then blocked his number entirely. 12 minutes later, Marco emerged from the building, his expression satisfied. He slid back into the driver's seat, started the engine without a word. "What did you say to him?" "I explained the situation clearly, made sure he understood his options, or rather his lack of options. Showed him evidence of his harassment, suggested that continuing to contact you would result in consequences he wouldn't enjoy." "What kind of evidence?" Screenshots you've been collecting, timestamps, patterns of behavior that could easily be classified as stalking under Illinois law. I never gave you screenshots. Marco's smile was wolfish. I know. I had someone pull your phone records, compile the messages. You should probably be more careful about your digital security, by the way. It's remarkably easy to access. Lena should have been angry about the privacy violation, should have demanded to know who Marco knew that could pull phone records, should have asked 1,000 questions about what exactly he'd said and how he'd said it. Instead, she asked, "Is he going to leave me alone?" "Yes." "You're sure?" "I'm sure. Tyler Morrison won't bother you again. You have my word." They drove in silence back toward Lena's hotel. She processed what had just happened, what it meant about Marco, about herself, about the new life she was building. "I should be upset about this," she said finally. "About you going behind my back, accessing my private information, confronting my ex like some kind of enforcer," Marco supplied. "Because that's what I am, Lena. That's what I do. I enforce solutions when legal channels fail." "You're admitting it. Finally." "You're ready to hear it. Finally." He pulled into the hotel parking lot, put the car in park. "I work for people who need problems solved quietly and efficiently. Sometimes those problems are business disputes. Sometimes they're personal issues. Sometimes they're situations where the law either can't or won't help. Is it legal? Rarely. Is it dangerous? Sometimes. Are you in organized crime?" Marco was quiet for a long moment. "I work adjacent to organized structures, but I'm not made, not sworn in, not bound by traditional hierarchies. I'm independent, a contractor who solves problems when called." Lena's nursing brain went clinical, processing information without emotional interference. "And Tyler, what did you really say to him?" "I showed him documentation of his harassment. I explained that continuing to contact you would result in me sharing that documentation with his employer, his parents, and several social circles he values. I also mentioned that I have friends who take stalking very seriously and that I would hate for him to accidentally encounter any of them." "You threatened him." "I promised him. There's a difference." Marco reached for her hand. "I know this is a lot. I know you probably need time to process what kind of man I actually am, but I won't apologize for protecting you. I can't." Lena looked at their joined hands, at this man who'd appeared in her life like something out of a fever dream. Dangerous, protective, possibly criminal, definitely operating outside any normal moral framework she understood. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt safe. "Take me home," she said quietly. "The hotel?" "No, your home. I want to see where you live, who you are when nobody's watching." Marco's expression shifted, something vulnerable breaking through that confident exterior. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Show me, Marco. All of it. No more hiding." He drove them to a high-rise in River North, parking in an underground garage that required 2 security clearances. His apartment was on the 23rd floor, sleek, modern, all dark wood and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Dante bounded over immediately, all 90 pounds of enthusiastic German shepherd nearly knocking Lena over. "Dante, down!" Marco commanded, and the dog obeyed instantly, sitting at attention. "You weren't kidding about him being well-trained." "I need him to be, for both our safety." Lena explored while Marco poured them wine. The apartment was beautiful but sparse, like someone who didn't spend much time there or didn't allow himself to get too comfortable. Few personal items, no photographs, books organized by subject rather than sentimentality. "You live like you're ready to leave at any moment," she observed. "Old habit. My father taught me not to get too attached to places." "Why?" "Because places can be taken away. People can too, but at least with people you have memories. Places are just real estate." Lena accepted the wine glass settled onto his leather sofa. "Tell me about her. The woman who died." Marco's entire body tensed. "That's not a first visit conversation. We're past normal dating protocols. You just threatened my ex-boyfriend and admitted to being some kind of criminal consultant. I think we can handle difficult conversations." He sat beside her, close but not touching. "Her name was Sophia. We were engaged. She died in a car accident 8 years ago." I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Sorry doesn't bring her back. No, but it acknowledges that loss matters, that she mattered. Marco looked at her, something breaking in his eyes. She would have liked you. Sophia was fierce like you, didn't take my shit, called me on my darkness, made me want to be better than I was. Did you? Become better? I tried. Then she died. And I stopped trying. Figured if the universe was going to take someone that good, there was no point in pretending I could be good too. That's survivor's guilt talking. That's reality talking. I'm not a good man, Lena. I do bad things for worse people, and I sleep fine at night because I've made peace with what I am. And what are you? Marco set down his wine, turned to face her fully. I'm someone who protects what's mine with everything I have. I'm someone who doesn't forgive betrayal. I'm someone who solves problems through fear and force when necessary. I'm someone who will cross any line to keep you safe, and I won't apologize for that. Lena should have run. Should have called a cab, grabbed her things, gotten as far away from Marco Valenti as humanly possible. Instead, she set down her own wine and kissed him. He responded instantly, pulling her into his lap, hands tangling in her hair. The kiss was different from before, darker, more desperate, like they were both acknowledging how completely wrong this was and how utterly unable they were to stop it. Lena, he breathed against her mouth, tell me to stop. Tell me this is insane. It is insane. Don't stop. They made it to his bedroom somehow, clothes disappearing, barriers breaking down. And when Marco made love to her with a tenderness that contradicted everything he'd admitted about himself, Lena finally understood what she'd been missing all those years with Tyler. She'd been missing this, being desired, being cherished, being with someone who saw all her broken pieces and wanted to protect them rather than exploit them. Afterward, lying in Marco's arms with Dante snoring at the foot of the bed, Lena felt her phone buzz. She reached for it automatically, then froze. It was from an unknown number. Wrong number girl found herself the right kind of dangerous. Cute. Hope you know what you're getting into. Her blood turned to ice. Marco. He took the phone, read the message, and his entire expression went cold. Get dressed. We're leaving. What? Why? Because someone knows about us. Someone's watching. And that means your association with me just became a liability. Lena's hand shook as she pulled on her clothes, her mind racing through the implications of that message. Someone knew. Someone was watching. Someone had connected her to Marco deliberately, maliciously, with enough knowledge to make it personal. Marco, slow down. Tell me what's happening. He was already dressed, moving through his apartment with military precision. Phone to his ear, barking orders in Italian too rapid for Lena to follow. Dante was on his feet, alert and waiting for commands. The entire energy in the apartment had shifted from intimate to tactical in seconds. We need to get you somewhere safe, Marco said, ending his call. Pack whatever you need from the hotel. You're not staying there tonight. You're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. That message wasn't random. Someone's sending me a warning, and they're using you to do it. Lena grabbed his arm, forced him to look at her. Stop treating me like a chess piece and explain what's happening. Who would send that message? Why? Marco's jaw worked, internal war playing out across his features. Finally, he sat on the edge of the bed, pulled her down beside him. I told you I solve problems for people. What I didn't tell you is that sometimes solving one person's problem creates problems for someone else. I have enemies, Lena. People who'd love to find leverage against me. And I'm leveraged now. You're more than that. But yes, to them you're a weakness, something they can use to manipulate me or hurt me or force my hand in situations I'd otherwise walk away from. What kind of situations? The kind where people die if I don't intervene. The kind where millions of dollars change hands based on my recommendations. The kind where power structures shift because I decided to help one party over another. Lena processed this, her nursing brain compartmentalizing fear to focus on facts. So someone knows about us. Someone wants you to know they know. What do they want? That's what I need to find out. But until I do, you're not safe in predictable locations. The hotel, your new apartment, the hospital, anywhere they'd expect to find you. I can't just disappear. I have a job, responsibilities, patients who need me. Marco stood, started pacing. I'll have someone call in sick for you. Family emergency, personal crisis, whatever excuse keeps you covered for a few days. You'll have someone, Marco, you can't just orchestrate my life without asking. Watch me. His voice was hard. The gentle man who'd made love to her hours ago, completely subsumed by whoever Marco Valenti became when he felt threatened. I won't apologize for keeping you alive. Who says I'm in danger of dying? That message says it. The fact that they know about you at all says it. People in my world don't make contact just to say hello. They make contact to establish dominance, to threaten, to warn. And I'll be damned if I let anyone use you against me. Lena stood, planted herself in front of him. Then tell me everything, right now. No more vague explanations about problem solving and dispute resolution. Who are you really? What do you really do? And who the hell is threatening us? Marco looked at her for a long moment, something like resignation crossing his face. You want the truth? The whole ugly truth? Yes. Fine. Sit down. This is going to take a while. They settled back on the bed, Dante positioning himself between them and the door like he understood the gravity of the situation. Marco took a breath, and when he started talking, his voice was flat, clinical, like he was reciting someone else's history. I started working for the Andretti family when I was 19. Started as a driver, moved up to collections, then enforcement. I was good at it, convincing people to pay debts, to honor agreements, to do what they'd promised when they'd borrowed money or asked for favors. I didn't kill anyone, but I made it very clear what would happen if they didn't comply. Lena's stomach twisted, but she stayed quiet, let him continue. After Sophia died, I went darker. Started taking jobs that required less conversation and more intimidation. Worked my way into a position where families from different organizations would hire me as a neutral party. Someone who could mediate disputes without bias, enforce agreements without loyalty to any particular structure. You're a mob mediator. Essentially. Though I work with more than just traditional organized crime. Corporations, politicians, wealthy families with secrets they need protected. Anyone willing to pay for solutions that can't be achieved through legal channels. And you do what exactly? Marco's eyes met hers, unflinching. Whatever it takes. I've threatened people, destroyed evidence, blackmailed politicians, facilitated money laundering, arranged for witnesses to disappear. I've broken every law that matters, and a few that don't. But I've never killed anyone, and I've never hurt anyone who didn't deserve it. Who decides who deserves it? I do. That's the luxury of being independent. I choose my jobs, my methods, my lines. And my line has always been no innocence, no collateral damage, no involving people who didn't sign up for this life. Except now I'm involved. Now you're involved, he agreed, voice rough. And that's my fault. I should have stayed away from you, should have ignored that first text, should have let you work through your heartbreak alone. But I was selfish. I wanted you from the moment you sent that message. Wanted your light in my darkness. Wanted to be someone different when I was with you. Lena reached for his hand. I don't regret any of it. You should. I'm ruining your life. My life was already ruined. Tyler did that all by himself. You gave me a reason to rebuild it. I gave you a target on your back. Then help me understand how to protect myself. Teach me the rules of your world so I can survive in it. Marco laughed, bitter and sharp. There are no rules, just power and leverage and knowing which threats are real versus which ones are posturing. So which is this? Real or posturing? He pulled out his phone, showed her the message again. The fact that they know your nickname from our first conversation, Wrong Number Girl, means they've accessed our text history. That requires either hacking my phone, which is highly encrypted, or having someone inside my network. Either option is extremely concerning. Could it be Tyler? Maybe he hired someone to follow me, found out about you? Tyler Morrison is a middle management corporate drone who cheats on his girlfriend with her friends. He doesn't have the connections or the money to access my communications. This is someone from my world, someone who knows me well enough to understand that you matter. Lena's phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Tell Marco that old debts don't disappear just because he found a pretty distraction. The Kozlov matter isn't settled. We expect resolution by Friday or the girl becomes part of the negotiation. She handed the phone to Marco with trembling fingers, watched his expression go from concerned to absolutely murderous in the space of a heartbeat. "Son of a bitch," he breathed. "It's the Russians. What's the Kozlov matter?" 3 months ago, Viktor Kozlov hired me to mediate a territorial dispute with the Irish crew on the south side. I brokered a deal, everyone signed off, everyone got what they wanted. Except apparently Viktor wanted more than what we agreed to, and now he's trying to renegotiate by threatening you. Can't you just give him what he wants? Marco's laugh was harsh. If I do that, I lose all credibility. Every client I've ever worked with will know I can be manipulated through personal attachments. I'll be useless, and worse, I'll be vulnerable. Viktor knows this. He's trying to force me into an impossible position. What happens if you don't resolve it by Friday? Then he'll make good on his threat, or try to. The Russians don't bluff. They establish dominance through action. Lena felt ice water in her veins. So what do? We get you somewhere Viktor's people can't reach you. Then I handle this the way I should have handled it 3 months ago. Which is how? Marco's smile was pure predator. Violently. Within an hour, Lena found herself in a car with 2 men Marco called associates, both built like linebackers, both armed, both treating her with careful courtesy that suggested Marco had given very specific instructions about her safety. They drove for nearly 2 hours, ending at a compound in rural Wisconsin that looked like a vacation estate but functioned like a fortress. Marco had come separately, arrived 30 minutes after her, immediately swept the property with Dante and 2 other men she didn't recognize. When he finally came to find her in the main house, his expression was grim. "This is the safest place I know. The property is owned through shell companies, off any grid Viktor might have access to. You'll have protection around the clock until I resolve this situation." "How long will that take?" 48 hours, maybe less if Viktor's smart, maybe longer if he's stupid. Lena grabbed his jacket. "Don't do anything that gets you killed. I didn't survive Tyler's betrayal just to lose you to some Russian mobster's power play." Marco cupped her face, kissed her hard. "I'm not dying for Viktor Kozlov. I'm ending this so we can have a normal life. Or as normal as life gets for someone like me. There's nothing normal about any of this. No. But there could be something good, something worth protecting. If you're willing to wait for me to clean up my mess, I'll wait. But Marco, promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll come back. That whatever you're about to do, you'll survive it and come back to me." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I promise. Though you should know I'm going to have to do some things you won't be proud of. I'm a pediatric ICU nurse. I've seen things that would break most people. I can handle knowing you're not perfect. This goes beyond imperfect, Lena. This is the part where you see who I really am when someone threatens what's mine. Then show me. I'm not running." Marco kissed her again, then left with his men, leaving Lena in the compound with protection she hoped she wouldn't need. She spent the next 2 days in a strange limbo, safe but trapped, protected but powerless. The guards were professional but distant, the property beautiful but isolating. She had her phone, but Marco had disabled most functions, said it was too easy to track, too dangerous to use normally. She could still receive messages, though. And Thursday night, one came through that made her blood run cold. Marco's making moves against Viktor. Brave but stupid. You should know that men like him don't win against organizations like ours. When this is over, you'll need protection. Real protection. I can offer that. Think about it. Dmitry Kozlov. Lena stared at the message, her mind racing. Dmitry. Viktor's brother. She'd heard Marco mention him once. The smart one, the strategic one, the one who actually ran operations while Viktor played figurehead. She should tell the guards, should relay the message to Marco somehow, should definitely not respond. Her fingers moved across the keyboard anyway. "I don't need protection from you. I have Marco." The response came within seconds. "For now. But Marco operates alone. We operate as a family. When he inevitably fails, remember that I gave you a choice. He won't fail. Everyone fails eventually. Even legends. Especially legends who get soft over nurses with pretty eyes." Lena's hands shook. She typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on simple truth. "Why are you really contacting me? This isn't about territorial disputes or old debts. What do you actually want?" This time the pause was longer. When Dimitri's response came, it wasn't what she expected. I want Marco out of the game. He's too good, too independent, too willing to side against the highest bidder if he thinks they're wrong. He's bad for business. You're my leverage to make that happen. You want him to retire? I want him neutralized. Retirement, death, disappearance, doesn't matter which. But men like Marco don't retire. They go down fighting, unless they have a reason to walk away. And I'm supposed to be that reason? You could be. Convince him to leave Chicago, leave the life, disappear with you somewhere we'll never find you. Everyone wins. Except Victor doesn't get whatever he wants from this Kozlov matter. Victor's an idiot who doesn't understand that Marco's worth more as an ally than an enemy. I'm trying to prevent a war. You're the only leverage I have that might work without bloodshed. Lena read the message 3 times, trying to parse truth from manipulation. Dimitri sounded almost reasonable, almost like he genuinely wanted to avoid violence. But men in this world didn't get where they were by being reasonable. They got there by being ruthless and smart enough to disguise it as reason. I need to think about it. You have until Friday, midnight. After that, Victor's pride demands action, and I won't be able to protect either of you from the consequences. The phone went dark. Lena sat in the compound's living room, watching the Wisconsin woods through bulletproof windows, and wondered if there was any path out of this that didn't end in blood. Marco called Friday morning, his voice tight with exhaustion. How are you holding up? Better than you sound. Have you slept? Sleep is for people who aren't trying to prevent gang wars. I'm close, Lena, close to ending this. Victor's getting desperate, making mistakes. Another 12 hours and I'll have leverage to force him to back down. Lena's stomach twisted. She should tell Marco about Dimitri's messages, should warn him that Victor's brother was playing a different game entirely, should definitely not keep secrets from the man trying to protect her. But if she told Marco about Dimitri's offer, he'd never consider it, would dig in harder, refuse to show any weakness, get himself killed out of pride or principle, or whatever made men in this world choose violence over survival. Marco, what if there was another way? What if you could end this without confrontation? His laugh was sharp. There's no diplomatic solution here. Victor wants to renegotiate a closed deal using you as leverage. I can't let that stand. If I do, I'm finished in this business. Would that be so terrible? Being finished? Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe this is the universe giving you an exit. A reason to walk away from a life that's going to get you killed eventually. Lena, we can't run. They'll find us. What if they don't want to? What if walking away is exactly what someone wants? Who have you been talking to? Marco's voice went cold. Did someone contact you? Lena closed her eyes. Dmitry Kozlov messaged me, said he wants you out of the game, that he'll let us disappear if you just walk away. The explosion of Italian on the other end was creative and extensive. When Marco switched back to English, his voice was deadly calm. Dmitry contacted you directly? On the phone I specifically disabled most functions on. He found a way. Of course he did. The Kozlovs have resources even I can't completely block. A pause. What did he offer you? Safety, a way out, for both of us. And you're considering it. I'm considering not watching you die for your reputation. My reputation is the only thing keeping you alive right now. You think if I walk away, if I show weakness, that the Kozlovs or any other organization will just let me retire peacefully? I'll have a target on my back forever. We both will. So what's the alternative? You fight Victor, kill or be killed, and hope that solves everything? I don't hope. I plan. And my plan doesn't involve running like a coward because some Russian sociopath made threats. Marco at Paket. No. You don't understand this world, Lena. You don't understand what it means to show weakness, to back down from a challenge. I do this or I'm done. Not done with the business. Done breathing. Lena felt tears burn her eyes. I can't lose you. I just found you. His voice softened. You won't lose me. Trust me. I've survived worse than Victor Kozlov. Have you survived someone who has a nurse from Chicago they can use to manipulate you? That's why you're in Wisconsin behind enough security to protect a senator. Victor can threaten all he wants. He can't reach you. But Dmitri can. He just proved it. Another pause, then Marco said something that chilled her to the bone. Did Dmitri ask you to convince me to run? Yes. And you're doing exactly what he asked, which means he's playing both of us. Victor's the muscle, Dmitri's the brain. Victor makes threats to make me react. Dmitri offers solutions to make me run. Either way, I'm out of their way. Lena felt stupid for not seeing it sooner. It's a trap. It's strategy, and honestly, it's smart. Dmitri's always been smarter than Victor, but he made one mistake. What? He assumed I'd choose survival over principle. He doesn't know me as well as he thinks. Marco, sometimes survival is the right choice. Not when it means spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. Not when it means every enemy I've ever made knows they can control me through you. I won't live like that. And I won't let you live like that either. So what do? You stay in Wisconsin. You stay safe. And you let me handle this the way it needs to be handled. By killing Victor? If necessary. But probably by destroying his operation so thoroughly that he has no choice but to accept my original terms. Victor runs on pride and territory. Take away his territory, he's got nothing left to be proud of. That sounds like it could take weeks. It'll take until midnight tonight. I've already set things in motion. Victor's shipments are being seized, his distribution networks disrupted, his legitimate businesses suddenly facing regulatory scrutiny. By the time I'm done, he'll be begging to accept the original deal. Lena marveled at the cold calculation in Marco's voice. This was what he did, who he was when he operated in his world. Not the gentleman who brought her coffee every morning, but the strategist who could dismantle someone's entire empire in 48 hours. And if he doesn't beg? If he comes after you instead? Then I'll be ready. I've got people positioned at every location Victor values. He makes a move against me. He loses everything, including his brother. You'd hurt Dmitri? I'd do whatever it takes to make sure you're safe, and this ends permanently. That's who I am, Lena. That's what loving you means in my world. The word hung between them. Love. He'd said it casually, like it was already established fact, like they hadn't known each other for 3 weeks. Marco, I know it's fast, I know it's insane, but I don't have time for slow and reasonable. Not in this life. So yes, I love you. And yes, I'll burn down everything Viktor Kozlov has built to keep you safe. And if that makes me a monster, then I'm a monster. But I'm your monster. Lena felt tears spill over. I love you too, which is why I'm terrified of what you're about to do. Don't be terrified. Be ready. Because when this is over, we're starting over. New city if you want, new identities if necessary, whatever it takes to build something that's ours and safe and separate from all this darkness. You'd really leave Chicago, leave everything you've built? For you, in a heartbeat. But first I have to make sure we can leave on our terms, not running from threats. That's the difference between escaping and choosing. They talked for another hour, Marco walking her through his plan, Lena asking questions that helped her understand the chess game being played with lives and territory. By the time they hung up, she felt sick with worry, but also strangely calm. Marco knew what he was doing. This was his world, his expertise. All she could do was trust him and wait. Friday midnight came with agonizing slowness. Lena sat in the compound's living room with her protection detail, watching the clock tick toward the deadline Dmitri had given her. Her phone was silent. No messages from Marco, no updates, no confirmation that he was alive and winning. At 11:47 p.m., her phone finally buzzed. It was from Marco. It's done. Victor accepted the original terms. Dmitri sends his regards and his assurance that you're no longer leverage. I'm coming to get you. Be ready to leave in an hour. Lena's hand shook as she typed her response. Are you hurt? Couple bruises. Nothing serious. Victor needed a physical reminder of why he shouldn't fuck with me. You fought him? Briefly. Then his own people pulled him off me when they realized I was about to destroy their entire operation. Turns out loyalty lasts exactly as long as the money. I'm so glad you're okay. I'm better than okay. I'm free. We're free. Pack your things. We're leaving Chicago tonight. Lena stared at the message. Leaving Chicago. Starting over. Building a life that didn't include looking over their shoulders constantly. One of the guards approached her. "Ma'am, Mr. Valenti just called. Said to have you ready for departure in 1 hour. We'll escort you to the meeting point." She nodded, went to the bedroom they'd given her, packed the small bag of clothes Marco had arranged to be delivered. Her entire life fit into one duffel bag now. 7 years with Tyler had left her with nothing, and 3 weeks with Marco had given her everything. The drive back toward Chicago was tense despite Marco's assurances. Lena kept expecting ambush, kept waiting for something to go wrong. But they made it to the meeting point, a private airfield north of the city, without incident. Marco was waiting beside a small plane, looking exhausted and dangerous and absolutely beautiful. He had a cut above his eyebrow, bruised knuckles, and a split lip that somehow made him more real than the polished man she'd first met. Lena ran to him, threw herself into his arms. Marco caught her, held her tight, buried his face in her hair. "It's over," he murmured. "Really over. Victor's signing the paperwork tomorrow, Dimitri's backing off, and I've made it very clear that you're completely off limits to everyone in this world." "How did you make that clear?" "Very thoroughly. With witnesses. And enough leverage to ensure anyone who violates the agreement dies broke and alone." Lena pulled back to look at him. "So now what?" Marco smiled, tired but genuine. "Now we get on this plane, fly somewhere warm and safe, figure out what normal people do when they're not worried about gang wars and death threats." "You're not a normal person." "No, but I could be, for you, with you." He led her onto the plane, Dante already settled in the back. As they taxied toward the runway, Lena watched Chicago's lights disappear behind them and felt something like peace settle over her chest. "Where are we going?" she asked. Marco took her hand. "Somewhere they'll never find us. Somewhere we can be whoever we want to be. Somewhere our biggest problem is choosing what to have for dinner instead of whether someone's trying to kill us." "That sounds perfect." "It won't be perfect. I'll still have nightmares. You'll still process trauma from Tyler. We'll argue about stupid things and struggle with normal relationship problems. But we'll do it together, and we'll do it somewhere safe." Lena leaned against his shoulder as the plane lifted into the night sky. "I sent you a breakup text meant for someone else, and somehow that wrong number became the right everything." Marco kissed the top of her head. "Best mistake either of us ever made." They flew through the darkness toward whatever came next, leaving behind the violence and threats and impossible choices. And for the first time since that terrible night in Tyler's apartment, Lena Moore felt like she could finally breathe. The plane touched down in Charleston just as dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. Lena had dozed fitfully against Marco's shoulder during the flight, waking periodically to make sure he was still there, still real, still choosing her over everything he'd built in Chicago. Each time she opened her eyes, he was watching her with an expression that made her chest ache with how much had changed in 3 weeks. A car was waiting at the private terminal, keys in the ignition, paperwork already handled through whatever network Marco maintained even in his exile. He drove them through the historic district as the city woke up around them, past rainbow-colored houses and cobblestone streets that looked like something from a postcard. "You've been here before," Lena observed, watching how confidently he navigated the unfamiliar streets. "I own a property here. Bought it years ago as a safe house, somewhere completely disconnected from my Chicago operations. Never thought I'd actually use it for its intended purpose." They pulled up to a narrow townhouse tucked into a quiet street 2 blocks from the waterfront. The exterior was classic Charleston, pale blue paint, black shutters, a small garden that had clearly been maintained by someone despite Marco's absence. He killed the engine but didn't immediately get out, his hands still gripping the steering wheel. "Marco, what's wrong?" "I'm waiting for it to feel real, waiting to believe we actually made it out." Lena covered his hand with hers. "We're here. We're safe. You did what you said you'd do. For now. But men like Victor don't forget. Neither do men like Dimitri. We bought ourselves time and distance, but that's not the same as permanent safety. So we stay vigilant. We build a life, but we stay smart about it." Marco turned to look at her, something raw in his expression. "You're talking about building a life here. With me. Are you sure that's what you want?" "I'm sure that I want you. Where we are is just geography." He kissed her then, soft and desperate, like he was still afraid she might disappear. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I don't know how to be normal." how to do regular relationship things without the constant threat of violence. Then we'll figure it out together. Neither of us has exactly been successful at normal relationships anyway. That earned a laugh, surprising and genuine. Marco grabbed their bags from the trunk and led her into the townhouse. Inside was beautiful in an understated way: hardwood floors, exposed brick, furniture that managed to be both comfortable and elegant. It felt lived in despite being a safe house, like Marco had put actual thought into making it somewhere he could breathe. Dante immediately claimed a spot on the leather couch, circling 3 times before settling with a contented sigh. Lena explored while Marco made coffee, running her fingers along built-in bookshelves filled with classics and true crime, studying photographs that showed a younger Marco with people she didn't recognize. "Who's this?" she asked, holding up a frame that showed Marco with his arm around a striking woman with dark hair and fierce eyes. Marco glanced over from the kitchen. "Sophia. That was taken about 6 months before she died." Lena studied the photo more carefully. Sophia had been beautiful, yes, but more than that, she looked strong, confident, the kind of woman who could handle a man like Marco without flinching. "She looks like she didn't take any of your nonsense." "She didn't. Called me on every lie, every manipulation, every attempt to control situations through force instead of honesty. Made me want to be better just so I could deserve her." "Do you think about her often?" Marco came to stand beside her, looking at the photograph with an expression Lena couldn't quite read. "Every day, but differently now. Before you, thinking about Sophia felt like drowning. After you, it feels like remembering someone important who helped shape who I became. I'm not trying to replace her. I know. And I'm not trying to turn you into her. You're nothing like Sophia, actually. She was fire and chaos and constant challenge. You're steady water, healing and cleansing, and somehow making me feel like I can be redeemed." Lena set down the photograph. "I don't think you need redemption. I think you need to forgive yourself." "For what?" "For surviving when she didn't. For being happy again. For choosing a life with me instead of staying loyal to her memory." Marco's jaw tightened. "You're very perceptive." "I'm a nurse. Reading people's emotional wounds is part of the job." They spent the first week in Charleston learning how to exist together without crisis. Marco was restless at first, constantly checking his phone, monitoring news from Chicago, making sure Victor was honoring their agreement. Lena worked on applications to transfer her nursing license to South Carolina, reached out to local hospitals about positions in pediatric care. They developed routines. Morning coffee on the small balcony overlooking the garden, walks through the historic district with Dante, cooking dinner together, Marco surprisingly competent in the kitchen when he wasn't trying to intimidate enemies. They talked for hours, filling in the gaps of each other's histories, learning preferences and quirks, and the small intimacies that made a relationship real. But underneath the normalcy, Lena could feel Marco struggling. He was built for action, for solving problems, for the adrenaline rush of high-stakes negotiations. Domestic peace made him twitchy. "You're bored," she said one morning after watching him reorganize the kitchen cabinets for the 3rd time in a week. "I'm adjusting. You're climbing the walls. Marco, you can't just turn off who you are because we moved cities." He set down the coffee mugs he'd been rearranging. "I'm trying to be what you need. Someone stable, someone safe." "I need you to be yourself. Just maybe a version of yourself that doesn't actively court death." "I don't know who that version is." Lena crossed to him, took his face in her hands. "Then let's figure it out. What did you love about your work besides the danger?" Marco thought about it. Solving puzzles. Finding solutions no one else could see. Helping people who'd been backed into corners with no good options. So do that, just legally this time. Legal problem solving doesn't pay as well. We don't need mob money to be happy. We need enough to live and each other and purpose. That's it. Something shifted in Marco's expression. "You're serious? You'd be okay with me starting over completely, building something legitimate?" "I'd be thrilled. Use that brilliant strategic mind for something that won't get you killed or arrested." Over the next few weeks, Marco started making calls, reaching out to former clients who'd appreciated his mediation skills, exploring opportunities in corporate dispute resolution, private security consulting, risk assessment for businesses operating in dangerous territories. His reputation preceded him, and apparently the skills that made him effective in criminal enterprises translated remarkably well to legitimate business. Lena started work at the Medical University of South Carolina's Pediatric Intensive Care Unit, diving back into the work that had always grounded her. The first few days were overwhelming: new protocols, new team members, new patients who needed her complete focus. But it felt right. Felt like reclaiming a part of herself she'd lost somewhere in Tyler's endless cycle of manipulation and disappointment. She came home exhausted after her first full shift to find Marco cooking dinner and Dante sprawled across the kitchen floor. The domesticity of it made her throat tight. "How was it?" Marco asked, not turning from the stove. "Hard. Good. A 6-year-old with leukemia coded twice. We got him back both times." "You saved his life." "We bought him more time. There's a difference." Lena sank into a kitchen chair, pulled off her shoes. "Tell me something good happened in your day. I need to think about something other than dying children." Marco brought her a glass of wine, kissed the top of her head. "I got a contract. Corporate mediation for a shipping company that's been having disputes with international partners. 6-month consulting agreement, completely legal, pays well enough that we can stop living off my questionable savings." Lena looked up at him, saw genuine pride in his expression. "Marco, that's amazing. It's boring compared to what I used to do." "Boring is good. Boring means you come home alive every night." "There is that." He returned to the stove, plating pasta that smelled incredible. "Though I have to admit, negotiating shipping contracts doesn't give quite the same rush as convincing gang leaders not to kill each other. Find your rush somewhere else. Extreme sports, gambling, base jumping, I don't care. Just nothing that involves people shooting at you." Marco laughed, and Lena realized how much she loved that sound. How different it was from the careful, controlled version of himself he'd shown her in Chicago. Here, in this house they were building together, he could be unguarded. They ate dinner talking about her patients and his new clients, and Dante's ongoing war with the neighbor's cat. Normal conversation about normal things that people in normal relationships discussed. It should have felt boring after the intensity of their first few weeks together, but instead, it felt like finally being able to breathe without checking over her shoulder. Later that night, lying in bed with Marco's arm around her waist, Lena felt her phone buzz. She almost ignored it, but something made her check. It was from her sister, Melissa. "Mom told me you left Chicago. Are you okay?" "Why didn't you tell anyone where you went?" Lena stared at the message, guilt twisting in her stomach. She'd been so focused on surviving, on building this new life with Marco, that she'd barely spoken to her family in 2 weeks. A few brief texts assuring them she was fine, nothing substantial about the danger or the escape or the complete upheaval of her entire existence. Marco noticed her tension. "What's wrong?" "My sister, my family. I disappeared on them. They deserve better. They deserve to be kept safe. The less they know about what happened, the better." "I can't just ghost my family, Marco. They're not part of your world. They don't understand why I'd suddenly vanish." "Tell them the truth. You met someone, decided to start over, needed a fresh start after Tyler. They don't need the details about Russian mobsters and death threats." Lena typed a response, fingers clumsy. "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. I'm in Charleston with Marco. We needed distance from Chicago, from everything that happened. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Can we talk tomorrow?" The response came within seconds. "Tomorrow. And you better have a good explanation for scaring Mom half to death." Marco read the exchange over her shoulder. "Your family cares about you. That's good." "Your family doesn't?" "My mother cares in her own way, but we were never close after my father died. She wanted me to be someone I couldn't be, and I resented her for remarrying so quickly. We maintain polite distance now." "That sounds lonely." "It's practical. Close relationships are vulnerabilities in my old life. Better to keep people at arm's length." Lena turned to face him. "Except me. Except you. You're the vulnerability I chose to keep." She kissed him, slow and deep, and felt him respond immediately. They made love with the kind of desperate tenderness that came from understanding how close they'd come to losing this, losing each other, losing the chance to build something real. Afterward, Marco traced patterns on her shoulder in the darkness. "I need to tell you something." Lena's stomach dropped. That sounds ominous. Not ominous, just honest. He took a breath. Dmitri contacted me yesterday. What? Why didn't you tell me immediately? Because I wanted to handle it before worrying you, but we agreed on honesty, so I'm telling you now. What did he want? To make sure I understood the terms of our agreement. I stay out of Chicago, I don't take contracts that conflict with Kozlov interests, and he ensures no one from that world bothers us here. It's a truce, essentially. Do you trust it? Marco was quiet for a moment. I trust that Dmitri is smart enough to know that leaving me alone is better than starting a war. But I also trust that he'll enforce the terms ruthlessly if I violate them. So we really can't go back to Chicago, ever. Would you want to? After everything? Lena thought about it. Chicago held her family, her history, 7 years of memories with Tyler that felt tainted now. But it also held the hospital where she'd become the nurse she was proud of being, friends she'd made, a life she'd built independent of any man. I don't know. Maybe someday, but not now. Now I want to be here with you, building something that's ours. I can live with that. Marco pulled her closer. Though you should know that Dmitri also said something else. What? He said Sophia would have approved of you, that she'd be glad I found someone strong enough to pull me out of that life. Lena's breath caught. How would Dmitri know anything about Sophia? He met her once, years ago, before she died. She came to a negotiation with me, refused to wait in the car like I'd asked. Dmitri was representing the other side. He told me later that any woman brave enough to walk into a room full of dangerous men and demand respect was worth keeping. She sounds incredible. She was, and so are you, just in different ways. They fell asleep tangled together, Dante's soft snoring providing background noise. Lena dreamed about Chicago burning and Charleston rising from the ashes, about wrong numbers becoming right choices, about loving someone dangerous enough to protect her and vulnerable enough to let her see his wounds. She woke to Marco already gone, a note on his pillow saying he had an early meeting with his new clients. The house felt too quiet without him, and Lena found herself restless, unable to settle into her usual morning routine. Her phone rang as she was making coffee. Unknown number. Her heart rate spiked, muscle memory from weeks of threats and warnings. Hello? Lena Moore? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. Yes? This is Detective Sarah Chen with the Chicago Police Department. I'm calling about Tyler Morrison. Lena's hand tightened on the phone. What about him? He filed a missing person report on you 3 weeks ago. Claims you disappeared without contact, that he's worried for your safety. I'm calling to verify that you're alive and that your absence is voluntary. Relief flooded through her. I'm fine. My absence is completely voluntary. Tyler and I broke up. I moved to South Carolina, and I have no desire to be in contact with him. I see. And the breakup was amicable? Lena laughed, bitter. He cheated on me with my best friend in our shared bed. So no, not particularly amicable, but I left of my own free will, and I'm safe and happy where I am. Understood. I'll close the missing person case, though I should mention that Mr. Morrison seemed quite insistent that you'd been coerced or manipulated into leaving by a man named Marco Valenti. Is there any truth to that? Detective, Marco Valenti is the best thing that's happened to me in years. The only person who coerced or manipulated me was Tyler Morrison, and I'm well rid of him. There was a pause on the other end. Ms. Moore, I need to ask you to be very careful about the company you keep. Marco Valenti has a file with our department. Nothing we can prosecute, but enough that we're aware of his associations and activities. He left that life. We both did. We're building something legal and clean here in Charleston. I hope that's true, but men with Mr. Valenti's background don't typically walk away cleanly. If you ever feel unsafe or need assistance, please don't hesitate to contact local authorities. I appreciate your concern, Detective, but I promise you, I'm exactly where I want to be. After she hung up, Lena sat with her coffee growing cold, processing the conversation. Tyler had filed a missing person report. Of course he had. Not out of genuine concern, but out of ego, out of the need to maintain his narrative that she'd been taken from him rather than choosing to leave. Marco came home 2 hours later looking energized in a way she hadn't seen before. The meeting went well. They want me to consult on 3 separate contract disputes, start immediately, full retainer agreement. That's fantastic. Lena tried to inject enthusiasm into her voice. Marco caught the false note immediately. What happened? She told him about Detective Chen's call, watched his expression shudder as she relayed the conversation. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry. My past is going to keep touching your present. Not your fault Tyler's a vindictive ass. No, but it is my fault that Chicago PD has a file on me, thick enough to warrant warning calls to women I'm involved with. Marco sat beside her, took her hands. Are you having second thoughts? About us? About leaving everything behind? Are you? Never. But I need you to be sure. Because this is your life too, and you deserve to make informed choices about who you spend it with. Lena looked at this man who'd appeared in her life through a wrong number and somehow become the right everything. Dangerous, yes. Complicated, absolutely. But also honest in ways Tyler had never been. Protective without being controlling, willing to change his entire life because she'd asked him to try. I'm sure. But Marco, we need to establish some ground rules. Like what? Like complete honesty. No more secrets about who contacts you or what threats we're facing. If we're doing this, building a life together, I need to know everything. Agreed. What else? We keep working on the legal business. No backsliding into old habits when things get tough or money gets tight. We stay clean. I can do that. And if threats come, and they will, we both know they will, we face them together. No more protecting me by hiding information or making unilateral decisions about our safety. Marco smiled, something proud in his expression. You're setting boundaries. Sophia would definitely approve. I'm setting boundaries because I love you and I want this to work. But I can't be kept in the dark about my own life. Fair enough. Full transparency from this moment forward. He squeezed her hands. Anything else? Yeah. Marry me. Marco's eyes went wide. What? You heard me. Marry me. Make this permanent and legal and something neither of us can walk away from easily. Lena, we've known each other for 5 weeks. Well, I sent you a wrong number text and you changed my entire life in one night. I think we're past conventional timelines. I don't have a ring. Haven't planned anything. This is completely backwards. I don't care about backwards. I care about us. About making sure that when the next threat comes, and it will come, we're bound together legally and emotionally and completely. Marco stood, started pacing the way he did when his mind was racing. You're serious. You actually want to marry me despite knowing exactly who I am and what I've done. I want to marry you because of who you are, because you're honest about your darkness instead of hiding it, because you're trying to be better, because you make me feel safe and seen and brave enough to demand what I deserve. He stopped pacing, turned to face her. I don't deserve you. Probably not. Marry me anyway. Marco crossed to her in 3 strides, pulled her up from the chair, and kissed her hard enough to bruise. When he finally pulled back, both of them breathing hard, his eyes were bright with something that looked like tears. Yes. Absolutely yes. I'll marry you, Lena Moore. Today, tomorrow, whenever you want. How about next week? Small ceremony, just us and whoever we need for witnesses. Nothing fancy. Nothing fancy, he agreed. Just permanent and binding and real. They spent the rest of the day planning, calling courthouses, figuring out paperwork requirements, laughing at how absurd it was to be planning a wedding after knowing each other for barely a month. But it felt right in a way that nothing with Tyler ever had. This was choice, not convenience. Love, not settling. Marco called in a favor from a jeweler he knew in Savannah, drove 2 hours to pick up rings he'd had custom made based on descriptions of what Lena might like. She marveled at how well he knew her already, how the simple platinum band with small sapphires matched her aesthetic perfectly. How did you know I'd say yes? She asked, turning the ring over in her palm. I didn't, but I hoped, and I believe in being prepared for the outcomes you want. That's very strategic. That's very me. He slipped the ring onto her finger. Perfect fit. They got married the following Tuesday in a small ceremony at a historic chapel downtown. Lena wore a simple white dress she'd bought the day before. Marco wore the navy suit from her sister's wedding. Their witnesses were the courthouse clerk and a kind, elderly woman who'd been waiting for her own appointment and got teary-eyed when asked to participate. There was no fanfare, no family, no traditional wedding elements. Just two people who'd found each other in chaos, choosing to build peace together. I, Marco Valenti, take you, Lena Moore, to be my wife, Marco said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. I promise to protect you, to be honest with you, to work every day to deserve the second chance you've given me at being more than my worst choices. Lena's voice shook as she responded. I, Lena Moore, take you, Marco Valenti, to be my husband. I promise to see you as you are, not who I wish you'd be. To build a life that honors both our light and our darkness. To choose you every day, even when it's hard. The clerk pronounced them married, and Marco kissed her like they hadn't just turned both their lives upside down with commitment that probably terrified them both. They celebrated with dinner at a quiet restaurant overlooking the harbor, champagne and oysters, and the kind of easy conversation that came from knowing someone's worst secrets and loving them anyway. When they got home, Dante had somehow acquired a bow tie, Marco's doing, coordinated with his security contact who'd been watching the house, and they spent the evening on the couch, Lena's head in Marco's lap, talking about where they wanted to be in 5 years. Alive, Marco said. That's my only real goal. Alive and still married to you. Aim higher. Fine. Alive, still married to you, and successful enough at legitimate business that we never have to look over our shoulders. Better. I want kids someday. Not soon, but eventually. Marco's hand stilled where it had been playing with her hair. Kids? You'd trust me to raise children? I'd trust you to protect them with everything you have, to teach them how to be strong and strategic and good despite the darkness in the world. Yeah, I'd trust you with our kids. I never thought I'd get to be a father. After Sophia died, I assumed that part of life was closed to me. Nothing's closed unless we choose to close it. We can have whatever future we want, Marco. We just have to be brave enough to build it. He leaned down, kissed her softly. You make me believe that's possible. That I can be someone worthy of normal, happy things. You are worthy. You just forgot for a while. They made love that night as husband and wife, the new rings catching lamplight, the future spreading out before them uncertain but chosen. And when Lena fell asleep in Marco's arms, she dreamed not of the past they'd escaped, but the future they were building, one honest conversation and deliberate choice at a time. 6 months into their marriage, Lena woke to find Marco's side of the bed empty and cold. She'd learned to recognize the difference between his normal early rising and the restless nights when his past came knocking. This was the latter. She found him on the balcony, phone in hand, jaw tight with the kind of tension that meant trouble. What happened? She asked, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders against the early morning chill. Marco didn't look at her. Dimitri's dead. Killed in a hit outside a restaurant in Chicago last night. Victor's in the wind, probably planning retaliation. Lena's stomach dropped. Does this affect us? It affects everyone Dimitri had agreements with, including me. Marco finally turned to face her. Without Dimitri's enforcement, those truces are just words. Victor's not smart enough to honor them, and whoever takes over the Kozlov organization might decide I'm more valuable dead than left alone. So what do? We prepare. We stay vigilant. We don't change our routines, but we tighten security. He pulled her close. And we trust that 6 months of legitimate business has given me enough distance that I'm not worth the trouble of hunting. But the news rattled them both. Marco hired additional security for the house, installed cameras, started varying his routes to meetings. Lena found herself checking over her shoulder at the hospital, scanning parking lots for unfamiliar vehicles, jumping at unexpected sounds. 2 weeks after Dimitri's death, Lena came home from a particularly difficult shift to find Marco in his office, with a man she didn't recognize. Both men stood when she entered, and the stranger extended his hand with careful courtesy. Mrs. Valenti, I'm Agent James Mitchell with the FBI. I was hoping we could talk. Lena's heart hammered. About what? About your husband's previous business arrangements and whether he'd be willing to provide testimony about certain Chicago-based criminal organizations in exchange for federal protection. Marco's expression was stone. I told you already, Agent Mitchell. I'm not testifying against anyone. I left that life. I'm building something clean here, and I have no interest in becoming a federal witness. Even if it means protection for your wife? We have intelligence suggesting that Viktor Kozlov blames you for his brother's death, thinks you leaked information to rival organizations that led to the hit. That's ridiculous, Marco said flatly. Dmitry was killed because he was too smart for his own good, made enemies by being better at strategy than men who valued muscle over brains. I had nothing to do with it. Mitchell pulled out a folder, spread photographs across Marco's desk. These were taken 3 days ago. Viktor Kozlov meeting with known associates, discussing plans we haven't been able to fully decode. But your name came up repeatedly, Mr. Valenti, along with mentions of Charleston and unfinished business. Lena felt ice water in her veins. Marco studied the photographs with professional detachment, but she could see the calculation behind his eyes. What exactly are you offering, Agent Mitchell? Full witness protection, new identities, relocation anywhere in the country, federal oversight to ensure your safety. All you have to do is testify about the criminal enterprises you facilitated during your time working with the Andretti and Kozlov families. And spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder waiting for someone to recognize me and put a bullet in my head. No thanks. The alternative might be shorter-term surveillance, but same result. Victor's not known for patience or forgiveness. Marco's smile was dangerous. Neither am I. Tell your supervisors that I appreciate the offer, but I'll handle Viktor Kozlov my own way. Mitchell looked at Lena. Mrs. Valenti, do you understand what your husband is suggesting? That he's planning to deal with a violent criminal rather than accepting federal protection? I understand that my husband survived in that world for 15 years by being smarter and more strategic than men like Viktor. I trust his judgment. Even if it gets you both killed. Even then, we make our choices together. After Mitchell left, Lena and Marco sat in heavy silence. Finally, she asked the question that had been burning in her chest since the agent showed those photographs. Can you really handle Viktor on your own? I don't know. Viktor's unpredictable, which makes him dangerous in ways Dmitry never was. Dmitry you could negotiate with, reason with, make deals with. Viktor just wants blood. So we run, change our names, disappear, start over somewhere. He'll never find us. Marco shook his head. We tried running. It brought us here, gave us 6 months of peace. But I won't spend our entire lives running from every threat. At some point, you have to make a stand. Or you testify. Give the FBI what they want, let them handle Viktor through legal channels. And become the man who broke every code I ever lived by. Lena, I can't. Testifying against former clients, against men I worked with, it would make me the worst kind of traitor. I'd rather die with my principles intact. I'd rather you live without them. He pulled her into his arms, held her tight enough that she could feel his heartbeat against her cheek. I know. But some things are worth dying for, and keeping my word, even to criminals, is one of them. The moment I become a rat, I lose the only currency I have left, my reputation for discretion and loyalty to agreements. Your reputation isn't worth your life. Maybe not to you, but it's the foundation everything else is built on. I lose that. I lose myself. And I won't do that. Not even for you. It was the first real fight they'd had. Not shouting or accusations, but fundamental disagreement about values and survival. Lena went to bed angry. Marco stayed up making phone calls in Italian, and they woke up the next morning with the problem still unsolved between them. Work became Lena's escape. She threw herself into her patients, into the controlled chaos of the pediatric ICU, where problems had medical solutions and outcomes could be managed through skill and dedication. It was the 3rd week of tension when a little girl named Emma was admitted with severe pneumonia, her parents terrified and helpless, and Lena found herself thinking about what Marco had said about protecting what mattered. Emma survived, was released after 2 weeks, and her parents thanked Lena with tears streaming down their faces. You saved our daughter, the mother said. We can never repay you. You don't need to repay me. I was just doing my job. But driving home that night, Lena realized that Marco felt the same way about his principles. He wasn't being stubborn or proud. He was protecting the foundation of who he was, and asking him to testify, to become a federal informant, was like asking Lena to stop being a nurse. It violated something essential. She found him in his office going through financials, stress evident in the tight set of his shoulders. "I'm sorry," she said from the doorway. Marco looked up, surprised. "For what?" "For asking you to be someone you're not. For suggesting you should testify when I know it goes against everything you believe in." He stood, crossed to her. "You were trying to keep us safe. There's nothing to apologize for." "Yes, there is. I married you knowing exactly who you are. Your darkness, your code, your inability to break your word even to people who don't deserve your loyalty. I don't get to change those things just because they scare me now." Marco cupped her face. "They should scare you. I'm making decisions that could get us both killed because of abstract principles about honor and loyalty to criminals. You're making decisions that let you look at yourself in the mirror. That's not abstract. That's survival of a different kind." They held each other in the office doorway, Dante whining softly from his bed in the corner. Finally, Marco said, "I have a plan. It's risky, but it doesn't involve testifying or running." "Tell me." "I'm going to Chicago. I'm going to meet with Victor face to face and end this permanently." Lena pulled back. "That's suicide." "That's the only language Victor understands. I'll bring protection, set the meeting on neutral ground. Make sure he knows that killing me would trigger consequences he can't survive. But I need to look him in the eye and make him understand that I had nothing to do with Dimitri's death, and that coming after me or you would be the worst mistake of his life. And if he doesn't believe you, if he decides to kill you anyway, then I'll have to convince him otherwise, very thoroughly." Lena recognized that tone, the cold, calculating voice of the man who'd confronted Tyler, who'd dismantled Victor's operation once before, the Marco who operated in shadows and violence when necessary. "When?" she asked quietly. 3 days. Gives me time to set up proper security, arrange the meeting through intermediaries Victor will trust, and make sure you're protected here while I'm gone. I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not." "Marco, we agreed. No more making unilateral decisions about our safety. If you're walking into potential danger, I'm there as backup." "You're not trained for this kind of confrontation." "No, but I'm trained to save lives when things go wrong. And I'm your wife. Where you go, I go." They argued about it for 2 days. Marco insisted it was too dangerous, that Victor might use her presence against him. Lena countered that her absence would make Marco reckless, that he'd take bigger risks if he wasn't worried about her witnessing the violence. Finally, Marco relented, but with conditions. Lena would stay in the car with armed security, would have an escape route planned and rehearsed, would leave immediately if things went wrong. She agreed to all of it, knowing that her real value wasn't in the meeting itself, but in giving Marco a reason to come back alive. They flew into Chicago on a gray October morning, the city looking exactly as Lena remembered, despite feeling like a different lifetime. Marco had arranged for them to stay at a secure location, another safe house she hadn't known he owned, this one in a high-rise with excellent sightlines and multiple exits. The meeting was set for that evening at a restaurant Victor controlled, neutral enough to prevent immediate violence, but familiar enough that Victor would feel confident. Marco spent the afternoon preparing, strapping on body armor Lena hadn't known he owned, checking weapons she'd managed to pretend didn't exist in their Charleston house. "You look terrified," he observed, catching her expression in the mirror. "I am terrified. I'm watching my husband prepare for potential combat like it's a normal Tuesday." "It was a normal Tuesday for a long time. I'm just remembering old skills." "I hate this. I hate that we're here, that you're doing this, that our lives depend on convincing a violent criminal that you're not worth killing." Marco turned to face her. "Last chance to back out. Stay here. Let me handle this alone." "Not a chance." The drive to the restaurant felt endless. Lena sat in the back of the armored SUV with 2 of Marco's security personnel, watching her husband in the front seat prepare himself mentally for whatever came next. His phone buzzed constantly, updates from people she didn't know, confirmations of backup plans and contingencies. They pulled up outside the restaurant at exactly 8 p.m. Marco turned to look at her, and Lena saw fear in his eyes for the first time since she'd known him. "I love you," he said. "If this goes wrong, if I don't come back out, there's a bag in the safe house with new identity documents and enough money to disappear completely. Promise me you'll use it. Promise me you'll come back so I don't have to." He kissed her hard, then got out of the vehicle and walked into the restaurant like he was walking into a business meeting rather than a potential execution. Lena watched through tinted windows, heart hammering as minutes ticked by. The security team maintained radio contact with Marco's people inside, giving her updates that were simultaneously reassuring and terrifying. Marco was seated. Victor had arrived with 4 bodyguards. They were talking. Voices were raised, something crashed. "Ma'am, we need to be ready to move," one of the security guards said. "If this goes south, we're getting you out of here immediately. I'm not leaving without my husband." "Mrs. Valenti, Mr. Valenti was very clear about priorities. Your safety comes first." Before Lena could argue, the restaurant's front door burst open. Marco emerged walking quickly, but not running, his expression tight. He slid into the SUV and they were moving before the door fully closed. "Drive," Marco ordered. "Now!" They peeled away from the curb, and Lena could see men emerging from the restaurant behind them. No gunfire, no pursuit, but definitely tension. "What happened?" she demanded. Marco was breathing hard, adrenaline clearly still pumping. "I gave Victor a choice. Accept that I had nothing to do with Dimitri's death and leave us alone, or I'd release evidence to federal authorities proving that he ordered the hit on his own brother." Alina's eyes went wide. "Did he order Dimitri killed?" "Probably not. But the evidence I showed him was compelling enough that if it went public, every organization he works with would assume he did. He'd be finished." "So you blackmailed him?" "I gave him perspective on what he had to lose versus what he had to gain. Killing me becomes the worst possible move because it triggers automatic release of the evidence. Leaving me alone costs him nothing and preserves his position. Will he honor it?" "He'll honor it because he's terrified and self-interested. Victor's a bully, and bullies back down when confronted with real consequences." Marco finally looked at her. "It's done. We're free. Actually, permanently free this time." Lena wanted to believe it, wanted to trust that one conversation could end months of fear and threat. But she'd learned enough about Marco's world to know that nothing was ever truly finished. They flew back to Charleston the next morning, both exhausted and wired. The house felt different when they walked in, like they'd crossed some invisible threshold. Dante greeted them enthusiastically, and Lena realized she'd been holding her breath for days. "So now what?" she asked, settling onto the couch with Marco pulled close beside her. "Now we live. Build the business, grow the life we started, maybe think seriously about those kids you mentioned. You're ready for that? For normal family life?" "I'm ready to try. I'm ready to be someone who comes home to his wife every night without checking for tales or threats. I'm ready to prove that wrong numbers can become right. Everything." Over the following months, they settled into a rhythm that felt almost mundane in its normalcy. Marco's consulting business expanded, bringing in enough income that they could buy an actual house instead of living in the safe house. Lena took on additional responsibilities at the hospital, started mentoring new nurses, found purpose in building something lasting. They visited Lena's family for Thanksgiving, Marco charming her mother despite Patricia's initial skepticism about the whirlwind romance and sudden marriage. He won over Lena's father by discussing classic cars and her sister by being genuinely interested in her new baby. By the end of the weekend, even Patricia admitted that Marco Valenti was good for her daughter. "He looks at you like you hung the moon," Patricia observed while they were washing dishes. "Tyler never looked at you like that." "Tyler looked at me like I was convenient. Marco looks at me like I'm necessary." There's wisdom in knowing the difference. Christmas came with snow that Charleston wasn't prepared for, and Lena woke to find Marco building a snowman in their backyard, with Dante trying to eat the snow faster than Marco could pack it. She watched from the window, coffee warming her hands, and felt something settle in her chest that she finally recognized as peace. Marco caught her watching, gestured for her to come outside. She bundled up and joined him, and they built the snowman together while Dante barked encouragement. It was silly and childish and absolutely perfect. "What are you thinking about?" Marco asked, adjusting the snowman's stick arms. "How far we've come. How a mistake became the best thing that ever happened to me." "You mean sending that breakup text to the wrong number?" "I mean finding you when I didn't even know I needed finding." Marco pulled her close, snow crunching under their feet. "I was drowning before you. Thought I'd already lived the best parts of my life and was just going through the motions until something finally killed me." Then you sent that text and gave me a reason to want tomorrow. Very poetic for a former mob mediator. I contain multitudes. He kissed her softly. And speaking of tomorrows, I have something I want to show you. He led her inside to his office, pulled out architectural plans she hadn't seen before. I bought land about an hour from here. Enough space for a real house, a big yard for Dante and future kids, distance from the city, but close enough that your commute isn't terrible. Lena studied the plans, saw a home designed for family, for permanence, for the life they were building together. When did you do this? I've been working on it for months. Wanted to surprise you. Wanted to show you that I'm serious about building something lasting. Marco, this is incredible. So is that a yes? We build this together? That's a yes to everything. The house, the future, the family, all of it. They broke ground in January, and Lena found herself spending weekends watching the house take shape. Marco was hands-on with the construction, actually using those strategic skills to coordinate contractors and materials and timelines. She'd never seen him so animated, so genuinely excited about creating something rather than destroying or manipulating. In March, Lena found out she was pregnant. She'd suspected for weeks, but had been afraid to confirm it, afraid to hope for something so normal after everything they'd been through. Marco cried when she told him, actual tears streaming down his face, and Lena realized this was the first time she'd seen him lose control of his emotions. I'm going to be a father, he said, voice broken with wonder. I never thought I'd get to be a father. You're going to be an amazing father, protective, strategic, and just traumatized enough to appreciate how precious normal moments are. They told her family over video call, told Marco's mother in a brief phone conversation that left him quiet and thoughtful afterward. Slowly, carefully, they were weaving their separate histories into shared future. The house was finished in June, and they moved in during a heat wave that made Dante hide in the air-conditioned basement. Lena walked through rooms they'd designed together, touching walls that represented permanence and choice, and the life they'd built from chaos. She found Marco in what would become the nursery, standing at the window looking out at land that stretched toward woods and privacy. Having second thoughts? She asked. Never. Just overwhelmed. A year ago I was convinced I'd die alone doing violence for money. Now I'm standing in a nursery waiting for our daughter to be born. Daughter? Marco smiled. You're having a girl. I can feel it. That's not how biology works. Doesn't matter, I'm right. And she's going to be brilliant and terrifying, just like her mother. Lena's water broke 3 weeks early on a Tuesday morning. Marco drove to the hospital with white-knuckled precision, called Lena's family, coordinated with her colleagues, and generally channeled all his strategic intensity into making sure everything was perfect. Labor was long and difficult, and nothing like the peaceful bursts in movies. Lena screamed, cursed Marco's entire existence, threatened to divorce him if he ever touched her again. He held her hand through all of it, let her squeeze hard enough to bruise, never once suggested she should calm down or breathe properly. Their daughter was born at 3:47 a.m., tiny and furious and absolutely perfect. Marco held her with trembling hands, tears streaming down his face again, and Lena saw the exact moment he fell completely in love. Sophia, he whispered. If that's okay. I want to name her Sophia. Lena's throat tightened. After your first love. After someone who would have loved you, who would have been glad I found my way back to living instead of just surviving. Sophia Valenti. I love it. They took their daughter home to the house they'd built, to the life they'd chosen, to the future they'd fought for. Lena's mother came to stay for 2 weeks, showing them how to manage sleepless nights and constant feedings and the overwhelming responsibility of keeping a tiny human alive. One night, while Sophia slept in her bassinet and Lena's mother was visiting her sister, Marco, and Lena sat on their back porch watching fireflies dance across the yard. Dante was sprawled at their feet, Lena was exhausted and sore and deliriously happy, and Marco looked more at peace than she'd ever seen him. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For sending that text to the wrong number, for giving me a chance when you had every reason to run, for seeing who I could be instead of just who I'd been, for building this life with me despite everything. Lena leaned against his shoulder. Thank you for answering, for being kind when I was falling apart, for protecting me without trying to control me, for choosing to be better instead of staying comfortable in your darkness. We make a good team. The best team, wrong number girl and the dangerous stranger who saved her from settling. Marco kissed the top of her head. You saved me right back. Don't forget that. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their daughter sleep through the window, and Lena thought about the journey that had brought them here. The heartbreak that had felt like ending but was actually beginning. The wrong text that became the right conversation. The stranger who became her husband, her partner, the father of her child. She'd thought finding Tyler in bed with Jessica was the worst night of her life, but it had been the catalyst for the best decision she'd ever made. Sending that message to a number she didn't recognize and trusting the response she got back. Marco's phone buzzed, and Lena tensed automatically. Old habits died hard. It's just a client, he assured her, asking about a contract dispute. Nothing dangerous. You sure? I'm sure. That life is done. This is our life now. He gestured at the house, the sleeping baby, the peaceful evening. This is what I choose. Every day. For the rest of my life. This is what matters. Sophia started crying, and they both moved simultaneously to comfort her. Marco lifted their daughter with practiced gentleness now, rocked her while humming something in Italian that Lena didn't recognize but knew was important. She watched her husband become a father in real time, watched him transform from the man who solved problems through violence to the man who solved problems through patience and love. I never thought I'd have this, Marco said, not looking up from Sophia's tiny face. Family, peace, a future that doesn't involve constantly looking over my shoulder. It still doesn't feel quite real. It's real. We made it real. And it was. Against every odd, despite every obstacle, they'd built something beautiful from the wreckage of Lena's old life and Marco's dark past. They'd chosen each other, chosen honesty, chosen to be brave enough to believe in second chances and redemption and the transformative power of unexpected love. The wrong number had become the right life. The mistake had become destiny. And as Lena watched her husband soothe their daughter while fireflies lit the evening and Dante snored peacefully at their feet, she understood that sometimes chaos doesn't ruin everything. It rearranges it into something stronger, deeper, and unbreakably real. They'd survived betrayal and threats, and impossible choices. They'd walked away from violence and built something clean and good. And now they had forever to discover all the ways that loving someone dangerous could become the safest choice she'd ever made. Marco looked up, caught her watching, and smiled. What? Nothing. Everything. Just thinking about how grateful I am that I sent that text to the wrong number. Best wrong number in history. Definitely. Changed my entire life in one message. Sophia settled against Marco's chest, finally calm. He stood carefully, carried her back to the bassinet, laid her down with the kind of reverence usually reserved for precious artifacts. Then he returned to Lena on the porch, pulled her close, and they watched the night together. I love you, Lena said. Dangerous past, complicated present, uncertain future and all. I love you too. Wrong number girl who became my right everything. And in that moment, surrounded by the life they'd built and the family they'd created and the peace they'd fought for, Lena Moore Valenti understood that some mistakes aren't mistakes at all. Sometimes they're the universe's way of showing you exactly where you're supposed to be, exactly who you're supposed to love, and exactly how much courage it takes to choose happiness over comfort. The wrong text had led to the right man, the right life, the right future, and that was the best outcome she could have ever imagined.